They say the blade must never dull, that a samurai lives by his sword and dies by it, that we wake each morning with our honor sharpened and sleep each night with it at our side. That is what they say. But here, in this small house on the edge of a quiet domain, my sword has not been drawn in years, not in anger, not in challenge, not even in practice. It rests on the rack near the door, polished more than needed, its edge rarely tested against anything but cloth and time. And I too have become like that blade, well cared for, carefully maintained, but still. I am a samurai. That much is true, but not the kind you hear about in songs or poems. I hold no post at court. I do not patrol the streets of Edo with an air of menace. No, I work in the archives. My days are spent copying ledgers, recording rice allotments, and making certain that the names of landowners are spelled the same way today as they were last season. My hands are better at holding brushes than blades. My shoulders are strong not from war, but from carrying scrolls up steep stairs. And in this way, I have lived many quiet years. There is peace in it, a certain rhythm, the kind that does not beg for attention, but hums gently in the background, like a kettle warming over charcoal, or a cicada too tired to sing. I rise at the same hour each day, just before the sun climbs over the tiled roofs, when the sky is still the color of cooled steel, and the dew has not yet remembered to vanish. My house is small, 2 rooms, a porch, and a narrow garden that grows more moss than flowers. The paper screens creak a little in the wind. One has a small tear I've meant to repair. But everything functions. Nothing breaks. The sandals by the door are my only pair, the same ones I wore when I was transferred here 5 years ago. The strap has been reknotted 3 times. I keep my uniform folded neatly in the chest. I wear it only when called upon to attend the domain offices, which is usually twice a week. The rest of the time, I wear a plain robe, tie my hair without care, and sweep the floor in slow, even lines. If this disappoints the ancestors, they have not said so. Sometimes I wonder what they would think of my life. This slow rhythm of boiling rice, brushing calligraphy, and bowing politely to neighbors whose names I forget, though they always remember mine. But I've come to believe that there is honor in quiet things, in a well-written line of kanji, in a door that slides without a sound, in a sword that stays in its sheath. There was a time I thought I would ride in battle, but the wars had long ended by then, and all that remained were the echoes, stories passed down from those who fought before us, now told around sake cups and firewood stoves. My war is smaller. It is the war of waking without complaint, of balancing ink and brush, of not letting dust gather on the blade, even if it will never be used. If that makes me a boring samurai, so be it. But there is peace here, a quiet peace. And this morning, like every morning, I begin again, not with a cry, not with a charge, but with breath. The soft scrape of sandals on old floorboards, the scent of rain still clinging to the stones outside, The cool weight of the sword I carry, though it no longer carries me. The day will not surprise me, it never does, and still I will meet it, the way a brush meets paper, slowly, quietly, without urgency. I wake before the sun, not because I must. There is no one to shout commands, no bell to ring, but the habit remains, woven deep into the folds of who I've become. The room is dim, but not dark. The shoji screens glow faintly, lit from the other side by the pale stretch of dawn. There is a thin draft. It carries with it the scent of wet stone, old pine, and something else, a kind of breath that only lives in the early morning, clean, colorless, still. I rise slowly. No rush. The air is cooler than it was the day before. My joints speak softly, but they do not complain. I fold the bedding neatly, square by square, until the futon disappears into itself. Then I slide open the screen. The house opens to a small courtyard, no larger than a tatami mat and a half. Moss grows along the base of the wall. A stone water basin rests in the corner, fed by a bamboo pipe that drips at its own pace, one drop every 23 heartbeats. I've counted. This morning the mist is low. It rests over the stone like a shawl, soft and white. A sparrow chirps once, then goes silent. I step outside barefoot, the boards of the veranda slightly damp. The chill rises through my soles and into my spine. It wakes me gently. The first thing I do is check the blade. It rests on a rack inside, near the door. Not displayed, not hidden, simply kept, like an heirloom, or a promise too old to break. I retrieve it carefully, always with both hands. Even after all these years, my body bows before my mind does. The katana is not ornate. The fittings are simple. The scabbard lacquered black and worn at the edges. It has served no battles in my hands, but still I clean it each morning, not out of pride, but practice. A folded cloth, a few drops of clove oil, the soft swish of cotton moving down the blade, slowly, without pressure. The act is not rushed. I polish as I breathe, in through the nose, out through the hands. I check for dust, wipe the fittings, slide the blade back into the scabbard with a faint click. It is not ceremony, it is memory. Next comes the kata, the forms. I do not train as I once did. There are no masters to impress, no rivals to measure myself against. But the movements remain, stretched into the morning like the limbs of a tree waking. I step into the courtyard. The mist parts slightly, but does not vanish. I bow to no one in particular, and then I begin. The blade draws slow. My feet shift. The cut moves from shoulder to hip, not quick, but clean. Then again, and again. Each form flows into the next, like a brush stroke. Draw, step, cut, return. The sound is almost nothing, just the faint swish of cloth and the rhythmic turn of breath in my chest. Above me, the clouds hang heavy, but without threat. A leaf detaches from the persimmon tree and drifts downward. I do not watch it fall, but I see it. These movements were once meant for killing. Now they are simply for keeping. keeping posture, keeping discipline, keeping balance. I do not sweat, I do not push. There is no rush, only the quiet ticking of time carved into movement. When I finish, I bow again, to the ground, to the morning, to the blade, and to no one. The silence has changed. It is fuller now, as if it too has stretched. I return inside, slide the sword back into its resting place, wipe the handle once more, and then I light the fire. The kettle is waiting, the tea leaves are measured, the cup is warm. The day has not yet begun, and already I feel it moving. Not like a charge, but like steam rising, quiet, present, gone before it is noticed. The body, like the blade, remembers. Even when the mind has forgotten the urgency of youth, the legs remember their stance, and the arms remember their arc. And so I move, not with purpose, but with familiarity. My right foot circles lightly into the dirt, pressing a faint crescent into the morning ground. The air presses coolly against my skin. I can feel the shape of it. When I exhale, I picture the steam from the kettle. When I draw the blade, it moves not as a weapon, but as breath itself made visible. There are 12 forms I still practice. I do not rush through them. Sometimes I complete only 3 before the tea is ready. But today I feel no need to count. Instead, I lose myself in the spacing, the gap between steps, the slight shift of balance, the pause just before the blade is returned to the sheath. These spaces are important. They are not emptiness. They are where the meaning lives. After the final form, I stand in silence. My arms are relaxed, the blade lowered, but not yet sheathed. A dragonfly lands on the railing beside me. Its wings tremble gently, but it does not fly away. Even it seems to sense that this is not a place for rushing. Eventually, I return the sword to its scabbard, the wood gliding against steel with a whisper. I do not sigh, but something inside me settles, like ash falling gently in a cold hearth. Back inside, the fire has begun to glow. The kettle rests above it, just beginning to stir with the slow murmur of heating water. As I sit, the warmth reaches my ankles first, then my knees, then my hands, folded patiently in my lap. I take a deep breath. Outside, the drip of the bamboo waterspout continues. Inside, the fire crackles softly, like old paper being folding. Nothing demands my attention, and so I give it freely, to the things that ask nothing. The angle of the light through the shoji, the weight of the teacup in my hand, the faint scent of soot in the morning air. A breeze moves through the room. The scroll on the far wall flutters slightly. Its calligraphy reads, "He sor ha he. Every day is a good day." I used to question that phrase, but now I understand. A good day is not an exciting one. It is a day that begins quietly, asks nothing more than presence, and ends with warmth. And so the day begins, with mist, with breath, with a blade that will not be drawn, and a man who no longer needs to prove he is strong. After morning tea, the sword is returned to its stand. I bow once before placing it down, not because it is sacred, but because routine is its own kind of prayer. Then I prepare the desk. The desk is not much. A short, low table by the east wall, worn smooth by elbows, brushes, and time. It holds a square inkstone, a brush rest carved from bone, and a small wooden box containing folded documents, each one waiting patiently to be copied. I kneel before it, adjust the cushion, and open the shutters just enough to let in the morning light. Outside, the garden remains still. A breeze stirs a branch. A bird dips down to the stone basin. But the sound is faint, filtered through paper, softened by space. I open the first document. Rice allotments for the domain's storehouses. 2 pages, 1 column per village. My job is to copy them neatly, exactly as they appear. Names, numbers, weights, markings. It is not difficult work, but it asks for care. And in this house, care is something I can always afford. I begin by grinding the ink. The ink stick is dry, black, lightly scented with pine soot. I pour a few drops of water into the well of the stone and move the stick in slow circles. The sound is quiet, like whispering sand. Around and around. I do not rush it. Ink, like thought, thickens best when unhurried. When the black becomes dark and glossy, I dip the brush, just the tip, then press it lightly against the edge of the well to remove the excess. I test the line on scrap paper. It curves like a shadow. It is ready. Then I begin. The brush glides over the page, leaving behind strokes of black that will dry into memory. The first name, Yamamura. The second, Gojo. The third, Takami. I do not know these people, but I write their names with care. A line, a pause, a breath. Then again. Sometimes the brush catches a grain in the paper. Sometimes the stroke falters, and I must begin again. There is no shame in it. Every document is a lesson in patience. Outside, I hear the faint creak of a cart moving down the street. A vendor, perhaps, or a servant on errands. But I remain still. The second page comes slowly. I stop briefly to stretch my fingers. They ache more now than they did a few years ago. Not with pain, but with the kind of quiet stiffness that comes from use. I set the brush down and roll my shoulders. The kettle hisses from the hearth. I rise, pour hot water into a clay cup, and sip gently. The tea is weaker now, the second steeping of the same leaves. But it is warm, and that is enough. I return to the desk and resume. Each stroke requires intention. Even the smallest mark, a dot, a line, a single flick, must be placed with thought. When I was younger, I found this work dull, repetitive, unworthy of a man who carried a sword. But now I find comfort in the repetition. It is quiet work, invisible work, and yet when I look at the scroll filled with clean, dark characters, lined up evenly like silent footsteps, I feel something settle in me, a stillness, like the pause after a bow. By late morning, the light has shifted. It filters through the window differently now, casting slanted shadows across the floorboards. I place the completed copy on a separate pile, fold it gently, seal it with a small ink mark. Then I clean the brush. Slowly, with warm water and the edge of my fingers, I tease the bristles straight again. Rinse, wipe, return to rest. The ink is poured back into the bottle. The stone is cleaned with a soft cloth. The desk is cleared. By now, the room is quiet again. No cart sounds, no birds, just the soft creak of wood adjusting to the day. I rise and stretch once more. Then I sweep the floor, Not because it is dirty, but because this too is part of the rhythm. A clean space, a clear mind. The ink dries in the corner, its scent lingering faintly, like the breath of a cedar chest just opened. I sit once more and wait for the rice to finish cooking. Nothing more is needed. This is the work of the day. Names on paper, brush on ink, mind on breath. The paper rustles slightly as I turn the page. It is not the sound of importance, not the crisp flap of proclamation or decree, but a soft, almost tired whisper, the murmur of a page that has been read before, handled by hands like mine, bent at the corners by use, not carelessness. These are the documents that make the world move quietly. Not the scrolls read aloud in court, but the ones stacked in wooden cabinets, never spoken of again. Still, I copy them, with precision, with patience, with ink that darkens as it dries. My brush hovers over a character. There are two ways to write this name, one with a heart radical, one without. I check the original again, heart. I copy it carefully. I wonder, briefly, if the man knows which version has been written on his behalf. If he notices that his name appears in records once a season, and that it is transcribed by someone who does not know his face. Then I let the thought go. The ink has dried slightly on the brush. I dip it again, gently. The second line is smoother. My hand has warmed. My back settles straighter. A breeze moves across the floor. The edge of the page lifts and falls. Outside, a pine cone drops with a soft thud onto stone. The room accepts the sound, then returns to silence. Sometimes I pause to realign the scroll beneath my hand. A slight shift to the left so the paper lies flatter. Sometimes I lift my brush before finishing a stroke, then press it again after a breath. These small decisions are what make the work personal. No one will notice them, but I will. In the margin of one page, I find a smear of ink. Not mine, someone else's mistake. I smile faintly. Even perfection forgets itself sometimes. When the ink runs low, I grind a little more. This time I slow my hand even further. The smell of soot and pine oil rises into the room. It mingles with the warm scent of rice, almost ready on the fire. I stir the ink in slow circles, as if drawing a spiral back toward myself. Years ago, I might have hurried this work, tried to finish it before the noon bell, measured success by speed. Now I measure it by stillness. How little my brush wavers, how softly the bristles return to a point. I write one more line, then another, and then I pause. My hand rests on the desk, the brush balanced in my fingers like a reed. I look down at the page I've just written, black strokes arranged in careful rows. Nothing grand, no poetry, just rice allotments, names, dates. But the lines are even, the ink bold, the spacing steady. There is satisfaction in this, a kind of quiet honor, not in the meaning of the words, but in how they are placed. Each line a step, each mark a breath. The room feels warmer now, or perhaps I've simply grown more still. A pot clicks softly from the hearth, lunch ready to be served. But I linger a moment longer, not because the work demands it, but because this moment, this pause between the final stroke and the next act, feels complete. A small completion, like the finishing of a bowl of rice, or the folding of a shirt. I set the brush down once more, cap the ink, close the box, bow slightly to the desk, then to the day. The writing is done, and in its doing, so am I, for now. It always does, eventually. Not suddenly, not in crisis, just a quiet noticing, like the weight of the bag shifting as I tie it closed after a meal. And so, as I have many times before, I prepare to walk to the storehouse. It is late morning. The sun has begun to stretch across the rooftops. The shadows grow thinner, but the air remains cool in the narrow alleys. I dress in my uniform, not the full regalia, but the working robe, gray with the faint crest of the domain near the collar. The fabric is worn smooth at the elbows. I tie my hakama loosely. They fit differently than they used to, a little looser around the waist, a little shorter at the ankle. I place the cloth rice bag in the satchel. I fold it carefully, even though I know it will be filled and creased by the time I return. Then I slide open the door and step out into the street. The village is not busy. It rarely is. Most people move slowly here, not because they are lazy, but because there is nowhere they need to be quickly. The first thing I notice is the smell: earth and charcoal, a trace of miso from the noodle shop, and the faint sweetness of pickled radish being set out to dry. I nod to the old woman who sweeps in front of her gate. She bows in return. She does not speak. We've greeted each other this way for years. A child runs past me, wooden sandals clapping against the stone. He glances up, slows for a moment, then continues on, half smiling without stopping. I do not mind. The path to the storehouse winds gently through the outer edge of the town. It is lined with low stone walls, patches of tall grass, and the occasional persimmon tree still bearing fruit. I pass the temple. The bell has not been rung today. A monk sits outside, folding cloth. He nods to me once. I return it. Further along, a man leads a horse by a rope. The animal's hooves are wrapped in cloth, likely to keep the noise down near the magistrate's office. Even the horse moves quietly. When I reach the storehouse, I bow before entering. The keeper is there, as always, a stout man with kind eyes and a voice that never rises above conversation. He recognizes me. "Sakuma Dono," he says. "Same allotment?" I nod. He moves to the back room. The sound of scooping, grains sliding into the wooden box, is the loudest thing I've heard all day. He returns with the rice folded neatly in cloth, bound with twine. He places it before me. I weigh it briefly in my hands, not suspiciously, just out of habit. We bow to each other again. No coins change hands. All of this is accounted for. Before I leave, he offers a small cloth pouch. "Fresh roasted barley," he says, "for your tea." I accept it with both hands, thank him, and turn back toward home. The sun has shifted by now. The walls of the houses cast new shadows across the road. A breeze carries the dry rattle of leaves, some of which dance briefly across the stones before settling. I walk slowly. The bag is heavier now, but not uncomfortable. On the way back, I stop briefly by the small bridge that crosses the irrigation canal. I lean against the wooden railing. The water moves lazily, pushed along by gravity and design. I watch it pass. A leaf floats by, so does a feather. Neither resists. I resume my walk. At home, I place the rice inside the jar. The sound of the grains filling it is soft and hollow, like rain falling on an empty basket. I set the barley aside for later. I wipe the satchel clean. I hang it to dry. The errands are finished. Nothing new happened today. No announcements, no visitors, no news. But everything that needed to be done was. and in the stillness of that truth, I feel settled. Outside, the sun continues its path. Inside, the house feels cooler now. The floorboards creak faintly underfoot. The kettle clicks as it shifts on the trivet. And I sit once again at the same desk, in the same robe, in the same quiet house. The storehouse visit is behind me. The ink work is ahead. But for now, just for a little while, I listen to the hush of a world that asks nothing of me except that I notice it. I close the wooden gate behind me with a quiet thunk. The latch drops into place. Not loud, just certain. It's a sound I know so well that I no longer notice it, except today when the stillness asks me to. Inside, the air is slightly cooler than it was when I left. The shadows of the eaves have shifted. They stretch further across the garden now, tracing slow-moving lines over the moss and stone. I place the cloth bundle of rice down carefully, not with ceremony, but with familiarity, the way one sets down a full bucket of well water or a folded robe just taken in from the line. The grains inside shift softly, that hush of dry weight, a sound softer than wind through grass. I open the cupboard. The rice jar sits waiting, its mouth wide and patient. I untie the string, unfold the cloth. The rice slides in with a quiet fullness, settling into itself. No scooping, no pouring, just letting gravity complete the task. The scent rises, not strong, but earthy, a fragrance of polished wood, clay jars, and the faint sweetness that lingers in grain. This rice will last several weeks, maybe longer if the weather stays cool. I fold the cloth, not quickly, smoothing the edges with my palm, pressing out the creases, and setting it back into the satchel for the next trip. The roasted barley is placed in a jar near the hearth. It will go well with tea later, maybe after the sun falls. Before removing my robe, I take a moment to brush it clean. Dust from the road clings to the hem. One dried leaf had found its way to the collar. I pluck it free and set it on the windowsill. I imagine it will blow away on its own later when I'm not looking. I change back into my house robe. The fabric is softer. The sleeves fall differently. The simple act of changing clothes is like exhaling. It tells the body, you are home again. Then I slide open the side door and sit on the veranda. The courtyard is unchanged. A stone basin, a patch of shaded earth, a single weed pushing up between the boards of the step, which I'll remove later, maybe. I watch a beetle crawl across the wooden planks. It moves with determination, clumsy but not confused. Its legs click faintly with each step. I wonder where it's going, but I do not follow. I simply sit. Not thinking, not reflecting, just sitting. A crow calls once from the cypress behind the neighbor's roof. Then another answers. The sound echoes for a moment, then fades into the drone of distant insects. My knees creak slightly when I stand, not painfully, just enough to remind me of my years. I return inside. There is nothing more to do now. The rice has been delivered, the barley stored, the robe aired and dusted. And yet, this small circuit of movement, from house to street to storehouse and back, has refreshed something in me. I do not know if it's the walking, or the silence between footsteps. Maybe it's the nods exchanged with people I barely know, or the scent of miso drifting between alleys. Maybe it's just the repetition, the comfort of a task that ends where it begins. When I sit again at my desk, the paper is still there. The brush has dried. I will moisten it soon. But for now, I let the moment sit, like steam in a warm room, rising just enough to feel before vanishing.
Midday arrives without announcement. There is no bell, no trumpet, no call across rooftops or flags fluttering in the breeze. Just a slow turning of the light, like a hand softly brushing dust from a table. The house grows warmer. Not hot, just enough for the air to thicken slightly, to stretch itself across the floor and drape over the window frames. The morning is behind me, the storehouse visit complete. Ink dried on the page. And now the day widens. I prepare my midday meal. Simple rice, cooked slowly. A few pickled vegetables from the jar. Sliced radish, burdock root. A piece of tofu soaked in soy and ginger. There is no rush to eat, but hunger comes like a quiet guest, expected and polite. I set the tray near the veranda, where the sunlight doesn't fall directly, but brushes the edge of the tatami with golden haze. I do not speak. There is no one to speak to. But there is a rhythm to the way the chopsticks rest on their stand, how the bowl is turned in my hand, how each bite is measured, not by hunger, but by presence. Outside, the sandals I wore earlier sit by the door, leaning slightly to one side. They catch the light in patches, the leather faded unevenly by years of use. A fly buzzes once, circles the room, and exits. In the distance, the faintest chime of a bell, the temple perhaps, or the breeze playing tricks on my ears. I do not get up to check. Some sounds are better left undisturbed. After eating, I wipe the bowls clean with a cloth rinsed in warm water. Then I fold the towel, place it over the edge of the basin, and slide the tray away. I stretch my legs, roll my neck. The warmth of the meal settles low in my belly, not heavy, just grounded. And then I sit again, not at the desk, not at the hearth, but on the floor, where the shadows are beginning to stretch toward the western wall. I rest my back against the pillar. The wood cools the fabric of my robe. A breeze moves through the open screen, softening the edges of the light. I close my eyes, not to sleep, but to notice more clearly how sound changes when the world is paused. There is the creak of a distant gate, the gentle rustle of cloth from the laundry 2 doors down. A bird chirps once, then changes its mind. Time becomes something looser here. It flows in uneven drops, like water dripping from a cracked ladle. Sometimes I count the drips, sometimes I let them pass. I remember, faintly, days when midday was filled with voices, a courtyard full of training students, the clang of wooden swords, the short bark of commands. But those were not my days, or if they were, they no longer are. This is not a courtyard of training. This is a house of stillness. And here, midday is sacred in its smallness, a sacred space between what was done and what remains. Outside, a cicada begins to hum. Its song is slow at first, as if reluctant to commit, then stronger, then stops. Even it knows the value of silence. A page on my desk lifts slightly in the breeze, then settles, and I let it be. The house holds still, not frozen, but quiet, as if every beam and pillar has decided to breathe slower, together. There are no footsteps in the lane, no shutters opening. Even the crows, once so conversational, have gone elsewhere. In this stillness, I can hear the house itself. The crack of old wood adjusting, as if remembering the days when it was first joined together by hands now long gone. A breeze makes its way through the open corridor, not cold, not warm, just passing. It stirs a few fallen pine needles near the veranda. They shift slightly, then rest again. I find myself watching the patterns of light cast through the shoji screens. They change shape as the sun moves, straight lines bending gently, corners softening into angles I do not name. They are familiar, but different each day. Time in this house does not announce itself. It changes without need for clocks. The slant of a shadow, the hush of a wind, the angle of sunlight creeping across the floor are enough to tell me everything I need to know. I close my eyes again, not to sleep, but to listen. There is a difference between resting and stopping, and in these hours I rest. Somewhere far off, a door slides open, the faintest cauchery of wood and track, then silence again. Someone, somewhere, is also alive, also moving slowly, also listening. Perhaps it is the old woman I passed this morning, now bringing in her laundry, or the boy who ran past me, having been called back inside to wash his hands, or perhaps no one at all. Some sounds are memory, returning for a brief visit. I glance to the corner, where my sandals sit by the door, still drying. Their leather has curved to the shape of my feet, each line and bend worn in through seasons of quiet walks, errands to the same places, steps on the same stones. I'll repair them again soon. The thread near the toe has loosened, but not yet, not today. There is a soft tapping on the roof, a leaf, or perhaps a sparrow shifting above. I do not investigate. Some things are more peaceful when left unnamed. I reach for the pouch of roasted barley gifted to me, untie the cloth. Its aroma escapes quietly, a mix of smoke and sweetness, like autumn held in the palm of the hand. I heat water in the kettle. The fire is nearly out, but enough embers remain. The flame flickers, licks the side of the iron pot, then rests. When the water begins to stir, I add a pinch of barley to the cup. Steam rises slowly, carrying with it a comfort that asks for nothing. I sip it alone. The taste is simple. No ceremony, no occasion. Just a warm drink in a silent room. After a while, I place the cup down on the wooden floor beside me. It leaves a faint ring of moisture. I do not wipe it away. Instead, I study it for a moment. How it blurs the grain of the wood, how it darkens and glows in the light, how it will vanish soon, without fanfare. I think about how many small marks this house has absorbed, from cups, from feet, from weather and age, and how it still stands, quiet and unmoved. The bell rings again. This time I am sure it is the temple. Not loud, not urgent, just one slow note falling into the afternoon, like a single drop in a deep well. I take one final sip of tea. By now, the shadows have reached the edge of my desk. The heat of the day has passed. The silence of noon has become the quiet of afternoon. And though I have not moved much, it feels like I have traveled a great distance without leaving the room.
The heat has passed. The sun, once stretched wide across the sky, now begins to lean westward. Shadows pull longer along the porch, climbing slowly up the walls. This is the hour when some rest, some doze, and others, like me, step back outside to greet the air again. I open the wooden door that leads to the inner courtyard. It slides with a dry sigh, the kind of sound only old wood can make, half voice, half memory. The air greets me, not with coolness, but with openness. It carries no urgency, just space. The courtyard is small, enclosed on 3 sides by the house, the 4th by a low fence and a single persimmon tree. The tree leans slightly inward,
as if watching my movements with quiet approval. I do not bring the blade at first, only myself and the silence that has walked with me all day. The ground is dry, softened only slightly by the morning's mist, now long evaporated. Fine grains of dust shift beneath my feet as I take my stance. Left foot forward, right foot behind, back straight, hands relaxed at my sides. I begin with breath. 3 slow inhalations, 3 slower exhalations. Not to prepare for battle, but to listen, to measure the silence between the sounds I make. Only then do I retrieve the sword. Not the polished blade reserved for ceremony, but my practice bakken, a wooden sword worn smooth by years of repetition. Its weight is familiar, not heavy, not light, balanced, like the space between thought and action. I step back onto the earth. The first form begins with a simple draw, a cut through air that resists nothing. The blade slices downward slowly, not to strike, but to remind me where my hands belong. I step, pivot, raise the bakken again. Another cut, diagonal this time. My feet shift with each movement, pressing faint patterns into the dust that will be gone with the next breeze. I do not count the forms. There are 12 in all, but I rarely finish them. The point is not completion. It is the doing, the motion, the rhythm of weight and breath. Overhead, the tree's leaves rustle faintly, each one a tiny fan turning in the afternoon air. A petal from the neighbor's garden floats in. It lands near my foot, undisturbed. I bow between forms, not formally, just a slight inclination of the head, an acknowledgement of something I cannot name. In these moments, my mind does not wander, nor does it fix itself. It simply rests in motion. One form flows into the next. A cut, a turn, a step, a pause. My hands remember before I do. They move not with precision, but with familiarity, the same way one reaches for a teacup without looking. The blade pauses at shoulder height. I breathe in, step, exhale, lower. Dust curls around my feet with each turn, a soft whispered applause from the earth beneath me. Insects sing in the grass beyond the wall. The sound is faint, but it dances in rhythm with my movements. Eventually, I stop, not from fatigue, but because the stillness has returned, and I no longer feel the need to move through it. I lower the sword, let it rest against my leg, then bow once more. The courtyard, unchanged, feels somehow different, not because I altered it, but because I stood within it, and it, too, stood within me. I return the bakken to its stand inside, wipe it clean, lay it down as gently as one places a sleeping child. I brush the dust from my robe, though I leave a little of it there, a quiet souvenir of the afternoon's stillness. Before I close the door, I look once more at the tree. Its branches sway, or perhaps it is just me, still moving in the echo of the forms. After the final bow, I remain still. The wind brushes past the courtyard wall, lifting a strand of hair near my ear, then letting it fall again. My hands rest at my sides, the wooden blade hanging loosely, its presence now an extension of my breath, not my will. I look down at the earth beneath me. Faint scuffs mark where I turned, where I pivoted, where my feet lingered between stances. Each one is a small, temporary record, a sentence in a language written by motion. The light has changed. It always does. What was once sharp is now warm. What was warm is now fading into coolness again. I return to the forms, not in sequence, but in pieces. A single cut, a step, a slow rotation of the wrist to realign the imaginary blade. There is no reason, no observer, no need to correct or adjust. These movements have lived inside me for decades. They no longer ask permission from memory. I remember the first time I held a sword, the clumsy weight, the awkward balance, how my teacher corrected the angle of my feet without saying a word. Just a quiet nudge and a look that said, "Feel it." I did not understand then, but I do now. The body remembers things long after the mind forgets them. The hand knows what the heart has grown too tired to explain. And so I move, not for practice, not for preparation, but because motion, like stillness, can be its own form of peace. A small bead of sweat forms behind my ear. It slides down, disappears beneath the fold of my collar. I do not wipe it away. The sweat is not labor. It is presence. The tree beside the courtyard drops a single leaf. It spirals gently to the ground, coming to rest near the base of the wall. I see it in the corner of my eye, but I do not look away from my stance. There is a form I favor. It begins with a step back, then a diagonal sweep of the blade across the empty air. I perform it again and again, each time slower, as if the blade is moving through water or through memory. Eventually, my shoulders begin to tire. The slight pull of age makes itself known, like a whisper from bone to muscle. I do not push past it. I let it speak. Then I stop, not abruptly, but as a tree stops bending when the wind quiets. I bow once more to the space around me. The air does not respond. It has no need to. But I believe, somewhere in the silence, something bows in return. I walk the perimeter of the courtyard once, not for inspection, but to acknowledge the space, to say thank you to the stones that held my feet steady, to the tree that shaded my shoulder, to the dust that softened my steps. By the corner post, a spider has begun to weave a new web. Its threads shimmer faintly in the fading light, delicate, almost invisible, but there. I do not disturb it. Instead, I return the bokken to the stand inside. The house accepts it with the same quiet dignity it grants all things. I wash my hands in a shallow basin, cold water clinging to my fingers before slipping away. I sit for a moment by the open doorway, gazing back toward the now empty yard. It looks no different than before I began, and yet it feels changed. Not transformed, not altered, just acknowledged. Like a well-worn robe folded carefully, or a garden stone touched once by rain. As the sun dips closer to the horizon, I feel the stillness return to my limbs, not as stiffness, but as rest. I will sleep well tonight, not because I practiced, but because I remembered what it is to move without aim and to stand without needing to arrive anywhere.
There is dust on the floorboards. Not much, just a soft veil that gathers along the edges where the wall meets the wood. A fine powder, too light to be noticed until the light tilts just so. I keep a broom by the inner pillar, its handle smooth from years of use, its bristles bound in twine, loose at the ends but still obedient to the hand.
It leans against the frame like an old companion, not waiting, just always ready. Sweeping is not urgent. It does not demand the body, only the attention. And so I begin, not with force, but with presence. The broom makes its first pass along the hall. It whispers. That's the only way I can describe it. The soft, rhythmic shh of bristle against wood, like wind moving through reeds or the pages of a book turning themselves. I sweep from one end of the corridor to the other, my feet bare on the cool floor. The boards creak here and there, not in protest, but as if reminding me of their age and mine. I stop at the first corner, bend slightly, reach under the low cabinet. A spider scurries aside, and I leave it be. This house is not mine alone. I resume. With each stroke, I gather small fragments of the day, a fleck of bark from the firewood, a thread from my robe, a forgotten grain of rice. Nothing grand, nothing strange, just the quiet evidence of life passing gently through. At times, I pause, not out of fatigue, but to watch the dust settle again after the broom lifts. It does not resist. It simply moves, then rests elsewhere. There's something deeply honest about that. The light from the window spills in at an angle now, longer and warmer. It glows along the hallway planks, illuminating the path the broom has already passed. I follow the light, not chasing it, just moving where it shows me. Occasionally, I stop to realign the tatami mat at the threshold. Its edge has shifted by barely a finger's width, but I notice. And so I kneel, adjust it gently, then stand again. The rhythm of sweeping becomes its own form. Push, pull, pause, step, push again. I am not thinking of anything, and so somehow I notice everything. The weight of the broom in my hand, the way the bristles bend and fan, the soft ring of my sleeve brushing the paper wall. The world has narrowed, not in loss, but in focus. By the time I reach the far end of the hall, the pile of dust is no larger than a leaf. I carry it carefully on a square of cloth, folded like an offering. Out to the back corner of the garden, where I lift a flat stone and release the day's remnants into the soil beneath. Then I lower the stone again, and the world is as it was. Back inside, I return the broom to its place. It leans once more against the pillar, silent and certain. I step onto the clean floor, feel the grain beneath my soles, and know where I stand. It is the same house, the same hallway, the same me, but everything is quieter now. Even the dust, in its absence, has left behind a kind of peace. I linger in the hall a while longer, even after the broom has returned to its place. The floor beneath me feels smoother somehow, though I know it hasn't changed. It is the same wood I've stepped on for years, each board shaped slightly by the weight of passing days. Some boards dip just a little at the center. Some creak no matter how gently you step. They are not flaws. They are the history of feet that have walked without needing to run. I press my toes gently against one such board. It bends, just slightly. The sound is soft, almost friendly, as if the house is acknowledging me. I walk the corridor again, this time without broom in hand. No task, just pacing. The open shoji frames the view of the garden. A small stone lantern sits among raked gravel. No one lit it last night, still it stands with purpose. In the stillness, I notice things I often overlook. A scratch on the doorframe from moving firewood last winter. A tiny fleck of red lacquer on the edge of the beam, left behind from the time the carpenter used the wrong paintbrush years ago. I never asked him to correct it. It reminds me of his hands and how they trembled from age but never failed their work. I pause at the end of the hallway, where the old cedar beam meets the earthen wall. Here, the sunlight doesn't quite reach, and the shadows pool in quiet corners. I lean my shoulder gently against the post, feeling the coolness of the wood seep into the cloth of my robe. Above me, a small crack runs along the beam's surface. I remember when it first appeared, years ago, after a long rainy season. It hasn't grown, it hasn't broken. It just remains, a quiet reminder that even what holds us can carry its own small wounds. From somewhere in the house, a soft creak, not mine, echoes faintly. The building speaks. I listen. That is the rhythm of this home. Give and return, step and echo. Not all homes speak in words. Some speak in stillness, and others in the dust left behind when we forget to listen. I sit once more at the end of the hall, cross-legged on the floor I've just swept. A slight breeze drifts in from the garden. It carries the faint scent of stone and the last notes of cedar smoke from a neighbor's chimney. I fold my hands in my lap, not meditating, not reflecting, just sitting, just being. And in that, there is a fullness I cannot describe. The kind of fullness that comes when nothing is needed and nothing is waiting. Just a man, a clean hallway, and the quiet hum of a day not yet finished.
There are some sounds that only come near sunset. A cartwheel dragging softly across distant gravel. The call of a child somewhere out of sight. The creak of bamboo straining as the wind returns to the eaves. And the knock. Not loud, not urgent, just 3 short taps on the wooden post beside the back entrance. A rhythm I've known for years. I rise slowly from my seat in the hall, dusting my sleeves with the side of my hand. When I open the sliding door, he's already stepping inside. Shimokawa-san. He's older than me by more than a decade, though he walks like someone younger than his bones permit. One foot drags slightly, an old injury, never spoken of, never complained about. He doesn't bow much anymore. We've known each other too long for ceremony. "Still sweeping your hallways, I see," he says, a slight grin tugging at one side of his face. "And still arriving unannounced?" I reply. He chuckles, and the silence between us softens. He carries no package, no scroll, just himself, and in his other hand, 2 cups wrapped in cloth. I motion him inside. We sit in the same place we always do, on the back veranda, overlooking the moss garden that neither of us tends anymore. It tends itself now. He unwraps the cups slowly, each motion deliberate. They're old ceramic, the kind with worn glaze that looks like riverstone. We do not speak for a while. The evening has its own voice, and we know better than to speak over it. Eventually, he says, "The persimmon tree hasn't bloomed much this year." I nod. It's been that way since the frost 2 winters ago. He sips his tea, though I didn't see him brew it. He must have brought it warm. "I remember when you planted that tree," he says, leaning back slightly. "You said you wanted fruit in 5 years. That was what, 40 ago?" 42, I say. Ah, another long silence, the kind that doesn't ask to be filled. We listen as a bird lands somewhere near the roof. It chirps once, then flutters away. The sound of its wings vanishes into the sky like incense into wind. He sets his cup down. "My son is thinking of moving to Edo." A clerk's position. He'll wear robes, but not draw a blade. "You're proud?" Shimokawa looks at me for a long moment. I'm at peace. And I understand. We were not raised to imagine pride with war, but time teaches us that peace is its own kind of legacy. I refill his cup from the small kettle. The tea has cooled,
But neither of us minds. Warm is enough. He leans his cane beside him, though he rarely uses it. There's a soft creaking from the roof tiles as they settle. The sun is behind the trees now, and the house begins to dim. I sometimes forget which days I've told you which stories, he says. I smile. I sometimes forget which ones were true. He laughs, a quiet wheezing sound, like a bell struck only once. The quiet returns. He doesn't fight it, neither do I. We simply sit, two old men, no longer needing to prove anything to the past, and with nothing urgent in the future. The evening deepens. I should go before the path darkens, he says eventually. Then wait a few more minutes, I reply. He does. We both do. Not because we expect anything, not because we fear the dark, but because there is a silence that only exists between two people who know the value of saying nothing at all. When he finally stands, his robe brushing the floor like a quiet farewell, he doesn't bow, and neither do I. He steps out into the evening. His sandals sound like memory against the stone. The sound of his sandals fades slowly. They brush the edge of the stepping stones, then pause near the front gate. A moment, then the soft clack of the latch. I do not rise to watch him go. I know the shape of his back, the tilt of his shoulders, the way he balances ever so slightly to the left when the cane is not in use. Some departures do not need witnessing. I remain seated on the veranda, the cup still warm in my hand. A moth flutters near the lantern post, drawn not to light, but to the memory of where light used to be. Even the insects seem more reflective at dusk. The scent of tea clings faintly to my sleeve. Roasted barley and old ceramic, a fragrance made of quiet company. The moss in the garden darkens as the sun withdraws. Patches that were green in daylight now lean toward silver, as if washed with ink. The wind has settled, but the silence remains soft, not heavy, just full. I lean back slightly, palms flat against the wood. The floor is still warm from the day's heat. And for a while, I do nothing, absolutely nothing. No reflection, no thought. Just the act of sitting, of being allowed to be still in a world that often forgets how. The house is quieter now, as if it too is listening for the last sound before sleep. I think about what Shimokawa said, about his son, about Edo. I imagine the young man wearing the clerical robe, stiff at first, his shoulders learning to carry paper, not sword. I wonder if he walks like his father, if he pauses before speaking, if he also listens to the trees when no one is watching. I finish my tea slowly. There is no ceremony in the last sip, just gravity and a faint warmth lingering on the tongue. Then I wrap the cup in the same cloth Shimokawa brought. It smells faintly of cedar, his home, his history, carried in thread. I set it beside the door, where it will wait until the next visit. We do not set such schedules. We speak when the air feels ready. We sit when silence needs company. And when we part, we leave behind no promises, only space for the next moment to arrive. The evening continues to deepen. A single lantern flickers to life in a neighbor's window, its glow dancing against the paper screen. I do not light mine yet. I prefer this gray moment, not yet dark, no longer day. It holds a softness no lamp can offer. I rise at last, not from obligation, but because my legs ask for movement. Inside, the air is cooler. The floorboards greet my steps with soft complaint, the same boards that creaked beneath Shimokawa's stride. I pause by the alcove near the inner room. There, tucked into a folded paper, is a note he left me years ago. A haiku. Not a good one, but his. I do not unfold it. I simply place one finger on the top edge of the paper, a gesture that means I remember, and that is enough. As I return to the main room, I look once more toward the veranda. The moss, the lantern, the cups, everything where it should be. But the air feels slightly different now. Not lonelier, just quieter, like a breath that has been let go. The evening continues to deepen. A single lantern flickers to life in a neighbor's window, its glow dancing against the paper screen. I do not light mine yet. I prefer this gray moment. Not yet dark, no longer day. It holds a softness no lamp can offer. I rise at last, not from obligation, but because my legs ask for movement. Inside, the air is cooler. The floorboards greet my steps with soft complaint, the same boards that creaked beneath Shimokawa's stride. I pause by the alcove near the inner room. There, tucked into a folded paper, is a note he left me years ago. A haiku. Not a good one, but his. I do not unfold it. I simply place one finger on the top edge of the paper, a gesture, and that is enough. As I return to the main room, I look once more toward the veranda. The moss, the lantern, the cups, everything where it should be. But the air feels slightly different now. Not lonelier, just quieter. Like a breath that has been let go.
The house grows quiet, as if it too exhales at the end of a long breath. The wind has withdrawn, leaving the trees to lean inward in their own silence. Somewhere far off, a nightjar calls once and is answered by nothing. The walls creak gently, timber settling into itself, as it does each evening. I do not rush toward sleep. I walk to it slowly, in the same way one returns to the same garden path each day, knowing it will always be there. In the corner of my room, a folded robe waits on a wooden stool. The day's garments hang beside it, soft cotton worn along the seams, creased not from disorder, but from living. I undress without ceremony. Every tie undone, every layer folded again with care, as if smoothing the creases from a memory rather than a piece of cloth. The sash is always the last. I coil it slowly, watching how it folds into itself like a river curling around a bend. Then I wash. Not a full bath, just a basin of warm water, a clean cloth, a few quiet passes across face, hands, and neck. The coolness grounds me. Some nights I light a candle. Tonight I choose the oil lamp. It stands on the low writing table, a simple brass vessel with a cotton wick that must be trimmed first. I do it gently, careful not to fray the end. A sharp snip with the old shears, and the wick is ready. I light it with a coal taken from the hearth. Its flame grows slowly, like a breath held in the palms of time. The lamp does not illuminate the whole room, just a circle. Enough. I open my journal. It is not a diary in the modern sense. No confessions, no secrets. Just sentences. Sometimes only fragments. Today I write, "Dust gathered again beneath the cabinet. The broom found it as it always does." Then I stop. Not because I have run out of thoughts, but because the sentence feels complete even without an ending. I close the book. There is comfort in leaving things unfinished. It means tomorrow still has room for something. I fold the bedding slowly, futon laid out over the floor, a soft pillow placed just so, blanket light enough for spring air. Before lying down, I walk once more to the edge of the veranda. The night sky is dark, but not heavy.
Clouds drift past the moon, thin like forgotten parchment. No dogs bark, no footsteps pass, only the hush of a world remembering how to sleep. Back inside, I extinguish the lamp with a breath. It flickers, then folds into smoke. I watch the smoke rise, thin at first, then vanishing entirely. Then I lie down, face toward the ceiling, hands over chest, not crossed, just resting. My eyes adjust to the dark, as if greeting an old friend. I do not think of tomorrow. I do not dream of what has passed. The body knows what to do now. And so I sleep. As I lie on the futon, the world begins to dissolve into hush. Not suddenly, not all at once, but gently, like ink spreading through water. The ceiling above me is just a ceiling, plain, wooden beams aged with time, the faint outline of a cobweb in one corner, an old nail that no longer holds anything. But tonight, it feels almost like a sky. There's a knot in the wood that I always look at before sleep, just above my left shoulder. It looks like the eye of a fish or the center of a whirlpool. I don't know when I began seeing it that way. I just know that when my thoughts wander too far, it brings them back. The quiet of the room deepens. Even my breath feels quieter now, as if it too doesn't want to disturb the stillness. In the distance, a wind chime trembles once. Not enough to ring, just a faint shake, a suggestion of sound. The futon beneath me holds the shape of my spine. Not perfectly, just enough to remind me that it remembers. The blanket is pulled to my chest. I don't tuck it tight. I leave space for the body to move and for the dreams, if they come, to pass through gently. I think of the day, not to relive it, but to thank it. The tea, the conversation, the moth, the dust, nothing remarkable, nothing forgotten. Each moment folded neatly, like the robe now hanging by the door. A warmth remains in my legs from the walking, from the sweeping, from standing too long in the courtyard. It does not ache, it hums. The sort of hum only known to those who have lived enough to feel time not as something lost, but as something carried. My hand rests over my chest, the other by my side, fingers relaxed, curled slightly inward, the way petals draw together at dusk. I hear the last ember in the hearth settle, a faint crack, a sigh, then silence again. No need to think, no need to reach, no need to explain. Just lying there within a room that has watched me grow older, one quiet night at a time. The paper walls breathe faintly with the wind. They move, but do not speak. I do not try to sleep. I allow sleep to arrive when it is ready, like an old friend who knows how to enter a room without making a sound.
The light arrives before my eyes open. It does not knock, nor ask permission. It simply enters, quiet and warm, spilling across the paper screen and brushing the floorboards like a fingertip drawn through water. I wake without alarm, without thought. My eyes open as the house exhales, and the first sound I hear is the creak of the rafters above me, a familiar groan, aged and unbothered. The futon beneath me is still warm. I remain still for a moment, neither asleep nor fully awake, hovering in that soft space between the end of night and the beginning of nothing special. I stretch slowly, like the roof itself settling. No yawn, just a long release from the joints, an acknowledgement that the body has rested and will move again soon. Outside,
A sparrow chirps once, then again. It is not a song, just a small declarative note. The morning has begun. I sit up. The room is as I left it. The folded robe, the coiled sash, the oil lamp dark, its wick slightly bent from where I extinguished it. I stand, bare feet pressing against cool wood, the grain like the lines of an old friend's palm, well known, unreadable, familiar. The basin still holds a little water from last night. I dip my hands, splashing my face with its leftover coolness. It wakes me gently, as if the day is whispering, "You may begin now." I open the paper screen to the garden. The air is different, new but not unfamiliar, moist from morning dew, tinged with the scent of stone and soft moss. The persimmon tree stands exactly as before, leaning, listening. A leaf falls, no wind to push it, just gravity and time. I bow to the garden, not deeply, but with the kind of respect one gives to something that outlasts them. In the main room, the house awaits. Nothing is prepared, but everything is ready. The broom leans against the same pillar. The hallway is just beginning to gather its soft lace of dust. A robe needs folding, a kettle needs heating. The day has no urgency, no tasks to conquer, no great matters to resolve. Just steps, just breath, just motion, and all of it exactly as it should be. I take the first step down the hallway. The boards remember my weight. The light glows against the walls. My body remembers the rhythm of quiet labor. There will be tea. There will be a pause by the door. Perhaps Shimakawa will knock, or perhaps he won't. Either way, the house will listen. And I too will listen, and sweep, and fold, and walk. Not to arrive anywhere, not to change anything, only to continue. The boring life, still alive, still mine, still beautiful.